It's still daybreak right here on Trust TV this lovely Friday morning. So we're going to look at our main topic for today. And today we'll be looking at the 2023 elections and women participation in politics. Now, this has been one of the most important questions in the contemporary socio-political era, namely, should women not play more active roles in politics? And this has once again come to the forefront in light of the 2023 elections. Now, in Nigeria, almost all political parties have active women's wings that work to coordinate and uphold each party's female support base. And after all, it is generally acknowledged that women make up a significant portion of any political or electoral demographic. However, it is regrettable that political parties appear content with giving women some titles like woman leader, deputy woman leader, and chief woman organizer, etc. Now, without giving them a real chance to make a political contribution to the development of the country. Now, a report shows that the national average of women's political participation in Nigeria remains at 6.7% in elective and appointive positions, which is far below the global average of 22.5%. Africa regional average of 23.4% and West Africa sub-regional average of 15%. Now, this formed the basis of our discussion this morning on Daybreak, and we'll be joined by Lady Ejiro Omukoro, a political civil advocate and Chief Vision Officer, Light Ray Media, and of course, NAOB, Country Director, Action Aid Nigeria. Ladies, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, all right. All right, so let's jump straight into it. Women participation in politics. Not just participation now, active participation in politics. Are we getting there?
I would say we can look at it in many prongs.
Okay.
One, we can look at first, can we measure interest? 2, can we measure active involvement? 3, can we now measure being given the opportunity in that leadership position to do things where changes really do happen, where decisions are actually made? Now, in interest, what we have seen, when you look at what INEC has released in terms of the ongoing voters registration exercise that began, if you look at the outcome of the results they had as at March, compared to what they had in August 2022. As at March, according to their data on the CVR, they had 6.1 million women who were registering, as against 6.9 men.
Okay.
Now, as at August, what the result has shown is that there are now more than 50% of women who have participated in the continuous voters registration. So if we're going to use that as a scorecard for interest, that shows there's something happening.
Okay.
Has it gotten to where we want? Not yet. Can it be better? Absolutely. Now, when we now talk about active involvement, that key word that you used,
exactly.
what we see is not as it is. Because when you look at the National Assembly, with the decision they made to throw out the affirmative action, even though the Constitution and even a high court has made a decision on that, that look, it's in the Constitution, it has to be recognized, you have to implement it.
Okay.
You will see that we're having this back and forth conversation going, and women had to come out to say, you know what, you can't just deny us. So what we're now seeing are mobilization of women groups, serving as their own lobby groups, encouraging other women groups, bringing them to the forefront and raising and amplifying their voices to be heard, to say, you know what, this is a right. Because for so long, women, by the same constitution, have been biased to them. Social upbringing has been biased to them. Religious doctrines have been biased against them. Now, these are challenges and hurdles they have to overcome. And in overcoming that, they're asking you for affirmative action. What is the job of an affirmative action? It's to bridge a gap where there has been denial for a long time, so that there can be some equity to happen.
Okay, well, there's some people that actually say that women demanding or asking for affirmative action is them wanting a handout.
It's not a handout when you think about it. It's like saying that those who were disenfranchised in terms of education in northern part of Nigeria compared to the southern part of Nigeria that early on embraced education the way we know it today. If you say no, don't give it to them, it was their choice to have been involved. That they were not involved is not a basis to now say we should it's a hand over to them. No. There has been a gap. There's been some disenfranchisement of some sort. either through religious origin, indoctrination, or social or cultural practices and belief system that alienated them in that space. So we're saying that there is evidence to prove that there's been a lot of alienation for women in that space for so long. I mean, when a book...
So, sorry, excuse me, Edro, if I can just pause a little and talk to any of you. Spent quite a long time, a lifetime, if I should say, in the field of activism, and then talking about this issue of alienation. Can you talk about that in relation to political participation of women in Nigeria?
I think here we are talking about a failure of a system to recognize the inequalities that is happening with the populace. I want to take it from the representation which you have mentioned, 6.7%. In the House of Representatives, you have 360, and only 13 are women. In the upper chamber, which is the Senate, you have 109, and you have only 8 women. I mean, what does that really tell you? You have so many committees that women are supposed to be participating. I always say that the decision that comes out of a boardroom depends on who is in the boardroom. And so, who is talking about women and children in the houses? We have about 11 houses of assembly. There is not a single woman. In the states, not a single woman. And you have women, committee for women and all of that. And all you see is men. How can a man talk about what it is to be in a labor ward? Or to be in labor and you cannot, the baby is not coming, life is in danger, there is no money, and we are talking of an environment where poverty is eroding so many things in Nigeria. More than 100 million Nigerians, or about that, is below the poverty line. What that means is that this 100 million, there are about 50 million of them that are women, maybe young women you can take, because 62% of the population, 62.27% of the population, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, are young people. What that means is that half of them are still within the productive age, and they are producing children. What comes? How do they get through to continuing the reproduction of the population? But let's go back to the issue of politics. The system in 1995, the Nigerian government was among those who was in Beijing and signed to the Beijing platform of the affirmative action, which is 35%. They say 30%. When the Nigerian government came back, it took so many years. It was just before the Beijing meeting that we got the Ministry of Women Affairs. Through the Babangida administration, they brought in the Women Commission that is now leading. Of course, we have a bigger women's center today. The Women Commission is there, and you have the DG today to organize women, and that led to the formation of the creation of the Ministry of Women Affairs to give priority to women. And so it became a lip service. When they eventually developed the National Gender Policy, the government says it's 35. Let's go up to this, let's take it up even higher. And they tried. And I just take it, when I say it's a failure of a system, the Buhari administration made a promise to Nigerian women on the 28th of August, 2018, that if he comes back in the next election, that he was going to give 40% representation to women. Has he met? He's almost on his way out. So what have you done in terms of representation? And then we came down, people came down to talk about, why do you have the Federal Character Commission when you are talking of the alienation now? We know we have a patriarchal nature which is skewed against women, unfortunately. But if you go back to your villages, you know the activities of women. When there are big issues, they bring women in. Because issues in terms of continuing relationship, it has to do with women, elderly women, how they correct the community, the value reorientation and all of that. And so when the Federal Character Commission was created in order to look at the imbalance of representation in the population. But you come back and then what you have done is like okay, it's okay to have federal character commission because you don't want one sect of the country to represent, and so are women not part of the character commission? So you can use the same principles to correct the imbalance of representation in your population. It's not the days of Fumila Ransom Kuti, Gambo Sawaba, Margaret Ekpo, when these giant women they fought for the Nigerian independence. They went to London, even at standard 6, or being standard 7 as it was then. They fought for they were part and parcel of it. And then we had the Aba women protest, when the men were being squeezed and they didn't know any way out of it, but the women felt this cannot happen because a woman's concern is about her family. A woman's concern is about humanity. And so when she's fighting for the rest of the family. And they went out and they mowed down, several women in the Aba women protest, which were still. So the labors of our heroes past should not be in vain. And so they struggle. Still continues.
Okay, we'll come back to the issue of federal character as regards women. Adro, you have somehow participated in the political space, so to speak. And from your experience, what are those hindrances that make it maybe that stop women from getting onto the big table?
I would not want to say it stops or stops women in the sense
hinders,
that women...
hinders.
That's better. So one of the things I discovered, fortunately enough, I was privileged. I used that word in a very profound manner, where I was, really sought out for, and I was made the only female spokesperson in the entire primaries election that we had before the candidates emerged. That showed me something, that when people consciously want the best, they will seek for who they feel can do the job. So when it comes to women's capacity, there is no question. Women have the capacity, they have the expertise, they have the experience, and they even have the capacity to, you see that running on around, doing the job, sending the information that is necessary, coordinating people, mobilizing. These are skill sets that are given to women. So we have that. In that conversation, here's what I'm saying, that when political parties, when political individuals, made in particular, for example, decide that they don't want to democratize the system of the recruitment of those who form the political party, we have a problem. A situation where we consciously see women as second-class citizens in Nigeria is a fundamental problem. How do we see this? I'm going to say something that may be a bit tricky and some people may not find it very comfortable, but I need to break it down so that we could deconstruct how this whole control of the narrative has somehow limited women. We see in many religious books where the gender of the Almighty is masculine. It's deliberate. That nature has always been neutral before now, even in ancient texts. But now we've seen it being masculined. In our own constitution, we see where the woman's voice is not even recognized. You see where in religious setting they tell a woman you're not supposed to speak. That's a second-class one. That's discrimination. You see a situation where a woman is supposed to aspire to a position of even in rulership. She has the capacity. A younger brother may not have it, or an older brother may not have it. But they will choose the male because by the culture, they are told that patriarchy is the system. So a system that enables patriarchy where you discriminate deliberately against a woman, that's another thing. Then when you talk about the economic empowerment of women, women have been told, even we've heard it at the highest level in our country, where somebody says that his wife is supposed to be in the kitchen. Now, when you perpetuate such narrative, you are raising a generation of young men who actually assume that the sole responsibility of a woman ends and begins in the kitchen, whereas she can be much more than that, how God has made her. So that's one. Then you look at another conversation with regards to the fact that when opportunities now come, even in recruitment processes, at work, if you see it play out, you will see how by a given, a woman stands, another man stands, and somebody just says, give it to the man, he will be ready for the job. Just a bias. Nothing, no competition has been set, no standard of requirement has been made, and even if it did, they'll say at the end, now man, he go feel run around. How? Based on what? So we've seen in Nigeria what we played out, and I like what and actually Ernest said earlier on, that what we've had is a system in Nigeria where our democracy is a flawed type. Flawed in a manner that you want to bring in incompetent people, even though the gender allows them to be incompetent. You say let them be, but a woman who is competent, you deliberately do not choose her, and then you now put other criteria that has nothing to do with the job before she can qualify to get that.
What is the school of thought, talking about politics now, there's a school of thought that actually believes or says that there's nothing that's written that says a woman cannot come and stand for this elective position or that elective position. It's open that you can actually do that, and numbers actually matter when it comes to politics, and women have the numbers. So a lot of people are actually saying, okay, if a woman stands and says, okay, I want to run for this particular office, and the women rally behind her, give her those votes, she will not be denied.
Okay, so let me quickly do something here.
Okay.
Remember, I'm talking about power of narrative.
Okay.
Over the years, who have always been in the space of politics in terms of numbers? Men. Women were told categorically, let's not even deceive ourselves, even in the growing up, that politics is not for women. There's a narrative everywhere about that. Then two, when you now look at the fact that when you give a woman a chance, see what happens now. The men now feel, look, we cannot allow them coming because they cannot come at the meetings at 2 a.m. They will not be able to attend to that. They need their husbands to give them permission. Meanwhile, when a man is doing that, he does not ask for his wife's permission. So what has happened is that you are consciously creating this kind of narrative that tells a woman you need somebody to give you permission before you can.
It's a cultural thing.
So there's cultural, there's religious, there's political. And then let us also remember that for many years, because women did not have the economic base, right, in terms of funding, that is a problem. Now, remember too, women have been used as mobilizers by men. So there's a narrative that consciously tells a woman that the only person you can vote as a leader is actually a man. So they turned them to women oye, used for that purpose. Women did not understand it because that has not been their space for a long time. But what we are now beginning to see, and I'm happy it's happening, is that women have come to understand that, look, we understand that these politics have been played by men for so long, because when you are good at it for so long, you will own the space. Women are now entering it and now consciously realizing that, okay, you know what we can do? We will consciously decide that we will vote for a woman. Because we have come to realize that somehow in our subconscious, we have been made to believe that the man is the only person to be seen as a leader. A woman too can be seen as a leader. The next generation of young girls who are coming up are beginning to understand that in breaking the ceiling in the business space, that's leadership. Leadership in business also means you can do well in politics, where decision making about lifestyle, about quality of existence, about the cost of bread, how much it is, about the taxi you enter, about how much you buy food in the market. When they begin to see the correlation, they come to understand that, oh, it's actually our own voice, our own power to begin to do this. And so there's this resurgence, there's this emergence coming, and it's going to continuously go on as we talk about it more, expose it to women, how they can become part of it, and this change can also happen.
Do you see that happening? That resurgence that she's looking, she seems to be so optimistic. Are we having this change anytime soon?
I think we need to look at the progression, in women's lives, in their national lives. When I was growing up, if you are growing up in northern Nigeria, very few girls make it to secondary schools. At that time, it was a very tough life. And many of us were married out, before we could finish secondary school and so on. So I have so many of my sisters who were disadvantaged. But you see now, we have thousands, millions of our children that are now graduates that won't have anything less than a first degree, even in northern Nigeria. So there's a lot of progress made for women. When I mentioned the three great women of our times just now, I had the opportunity to meet with Margaret Ekpo, of blessed memory now. She was the last of them that was still there. I struggled to see Gambo Sawaba, but I didn't have the luck. of blessed memory too. These are great women. What was their level of education? But they would rally around women. Women's issues was a call for them to even meet each other at that time with the kind of transportation that they had and all of that. So, and now we didn't have a graduate as a lawyer at that time, as women. But we have millions of women who are Nigerian graduates today. We have millions of women who are Nigerian doctors today. We have millions who are Nigerian engineers today, who are scientists, and all of that today. That means that there is a lot of progress.
But does it
now
link to political parties?
Now you're talking of going into politics. If people just knock it off to say women have not been in politics, then it's a misconception. Because the smallest unit of governance is the family. So women have been there, but are they recognized? You also pull them, you said the highest level, which was celebrated, women leader. And people are very proud of it when they become a woman leader. If so celebrated, so much congratulations. Don't give me a position because I'm a woman. Give me a position because I'm a human being. Because women's rights are, rights generally are human rights. And so we need to look at the conception of, okay, going into politics is not just money that is, money is a barrier, but it's not just money. It's about sensitization. And what we are doing now is building the women agency, building unity across the women's groups. ActionAid Nigeria is currently, working with two funders that are sponsoring, that's Global Affairs Canada and Ford Foundation. And we are supporting more than about 136 women-led organizations. Women-led alone is the first of its kind. Women-led to work on women's voices in leadership. They are also working on gender-based violence. The issue of gender-based violence is happening. So to mobilize the agency of women, ActionAid has done a lot in terms of youth mobilization. We worked with, Yaga Africa in the Not Too Young to Run and all of that. And we have to look at, because our own target group is women and girls, women and children, young people and people with disability, looking at that environment. Now you are going into politics, the population that we have seen, it's still very low, those who are going into contests. Look at the kind of the primaries that we just ran, where people are no longer buying delegates, but they are buying candidates. And we all know that these people are bought. Vote trading is a crime, but nobody has been arrested. Silently, everybody knows. That's what I mean, that if this country wants to get something right, they know what to do. We have the DSS, we have the intelligence, the National Intelligence Agency, we have, the police themselves and so on and so forth. What we need to do is organizing more. Voter education for women, we're organizing across. When the gender bills were thrown out, we occupied the National Assembly for 4 weeks. For 10 legislative days, we were there in the hot sun with women who understand. We did not just mobilize anyhow women who knew what was happening. But it was a spontaneous reaction where we had thousands of women at the gates of the National Assembly. 5 bills, you just flung them as if that is nothing. Why are the men afraid of women? You cannot even say that you have put them aside, because every man has a mother. We have to look at who is the woman. You have a mother, you have a sister, you have a daughter, you have your cousins, you have your teachers, and so on and so forth. Women are around you. What we are saying for the future of Nigeria, boys and girls need to be together so that we can build a better world. 2023 may not show us a good picture, but I can tell you that 2027 will show us a very good picture. Because who we want to go into the positions is who will go. We can create many governors, women, female governors, younger people, and so on and so forth. It will be something, but we are calling on all women of Nigeria that when you see a woman in the ballot paper, we are mobilizing women across the party lines, that if you see a woman, just vote for her.
All right, a lot of people will actually look forward to seeing that happen. So she just touched on something that I actually wanted to ask. those bills were sent to the National Assembly. There was a lot of hope, really, when those bills were there and they were being talked about, and all of a sudden they were thrown out. What next?
But there's a High Court decision already that says it has to be implemented.
Okay.
So this conversation, we shouldn't even be having it again if the National Assembly knew what they were doing.
No, unfortunately, we're having it.
So that tells us something. That tells us that the quality of those who are currently in the National Assembly do not deserve to be there.
Something needs to be done.
They don't deserve to be there. I like the way she used the expression. You just threw out 5 gender bills. This is about federal character. This is about representing your daughter, your wife, your mother. An opportunity to do so, who are part of a constituency, mind you, and you didn't feel that constituency was an important one. So where we should be going this conversation now is this. Nigerian women, and I like what ActionAid is doing, and that's what we're also doing with Light Ray Media and other paper. We are getting to the point where we know that when you sensitize women to understand their power, just like we're sensitizing voters to understand the office of the citizen, voter apathy is strong. Why? Because we've had cases where you just saw people being bought over, manipulating the process, corrupting the electoral processes. That has been our bane. Now, with voter education, what we are seeing is a situation where citizens are beginning to be suddenly aware that we actually have this power. We're having that same conversation and sensitization for women as well. You have the power. Go out there, get involved. And getting involved means showing interest first in politics, listening to the news, having conversation with your friends, not just on clothing and shoes and things like that or where to travel to, but also on the key issue. This National Assembly member, he didn't pass this bill. This is why bread is now 1,000 naira for a small loaf. Even these shoes that I'm buying that used to be maybe 1,200 is now 8,000 naira. That's too much on me. Then they understand that the decision maker, whether at the executive, at the legislative, or the judiciary, is key. So our call to the National Assembly is this. There is a law for the 35% affirmative action in the Constitution, judged rightly by a competent judge in a competent court in Nigeria, saying you have to implement this. Let us even give it to states, for example, like in Kaduna, where I know that the cabinet were about 47% of women representation. That's commendable. So going forward, Nigerians who are going to make the decision now, inquire as well, then Nigerians should understand that going forward, in 2023, with the vote that we have, 6.9 men, 6.1 women, right, in that capacity, and there are more already. That's a lot of votes. Let them know that if you are voting anybody who does not have the competence and importantly the character, the capacity to deliver, and the person who understands that the representation of Nigeria is about youth, is about women, is about PLW people, and as well as the men, then such persons are not the people you want to go vote for.
But this wouldn't this amount to, some actually say this, that it will amount to tokenism instead of, going for competence. You mentioned that you were actually poached because of what it was believed that you could do. So now if you say give this to women, give this to this woman, isn't that tokenism? You
know what? Right now as we speak, there's no tokenism here. You know why? Because the women who are going out there are such competent people. Standing at the National Assembly for 10 days, 4 weeks, having a conversation and saying, no, this is wrong, that we made the National Assembly sit up. It's never happened before. Even the NSAS was another reminder of where young women were very active in the forefront. You know what I'm saying? They drove that conversation. So what we are having is a situation, it's not tokenism right now. There are too many competent women. I started with the fact that in the business field, we have conquered the business ceiling to such an extent. Name where industry you want to talk about. Name any sector. Name any field. Even the social, the public service we have in Nigeria and the civil service we have in Nigeria. We've seen women who are, what do you call them, permanent secretary, who are directors. They have their capacity. We've also seen women who are women leaders simply because you want to give them that title. And our conversation is, don't give us women leader titles. Give us a job where we have the competency to do it. Just like you can hand over to a man, you can also hand over to a woman.
All right.
Okay,
go ahead.
So now, I come back to you. How do we now break the glass ceiling?
I think, yes, we have been, the 35% did not just come overnight. We sat after the 2019 general election, we looked at the population, the number of women that have emerged. And that made us to think and say, what else can we do? Women Trust Fund called us to the meeting, and we sat and said, what else can we do? Is this, there's so many portions of the Constitution that are not justiciable. There are different areas, because one of the things that the Parliament raised was there is no discrimination in the Constitution. But I'll quickly point out that if there is no discrimination, why did you do federal character? It's because you want to improve the representation, the quality of representation of the population, so that when you are taking decisions, they are not biased. I think it's going to, we are not waiting anymore. We are not waiting. If you cannot give it, what do we have? If you take women's issues to the Parliament, who is there to decide? Who will fight for you? If you take, if you create 5 committees, for example, or 6 committees in the Senate, how many women will be there? What voice is going to be heard? If you create such committees in the House of Representatives, what's going to happen? If you create committees where you don't even have one woman, what's going to happen? If you create committees where you have only one woman. So in decisions, for example, you have people who are governors, governorship candidates. They can't even find a competent daughter of their state to be a deputy. It means they don't have a competent daughter. That is amazing. And these daughters are going out and they are blazing the trail. Look at what has happened with the sports now. How many goals have men gone to collect?
Now,
women have even come down. Men have even, women have come down to this point to say, we can go and handle No, it's not about bragging. Yeah, if it is bragging right, then take it. The scientists that have gone to represent these countries, where are they from? Women, female scientists. And so in breaking it, and that's why we say we need a lot of homework. And we have accepted the responsibility. I'm also on the part of, I'm also the convener, Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room. Elections, we have been monitoring elections. We are amazed that more active women are coming out. The violence against women also reduce the intentions or the inspiration of women. Like you can see our beautiful sister, Salome, of blessed memory. She was so powerful that they had to burn her house down in order to ensure that she got burnt, because she was much more powerful.
A lot of things,
a lot of things are happening. So we will mobilize.
Unfortunately, the time is.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
So, ladies, it's been amazing having you on the show.
The struggle continues.
Exactly, and it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much for coming on Daybreak this morning. Well, watch out, the women are coming.